Good day and welcome to Alena Media TV. We are broadcasting from Toronto, Canada. I am Elsa Abraham, and in this episode we are bringing you editorial. Who's responsible for the latest tragedy in Ethiopia? Let's go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll get our editorial in details. Welcome back from that short break now. Before April 2018, few people outside Ethiopia had heard about Abiy Ahmed. Then he became the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, removed most of the political restrictions that had weighed down Ethiopians for years, brought a lingering war from Ethiopia to a peaceful end, won a Nobel Peace Prize, and led his countrymen in planting a record of 350 million tree seedlings in one day, all in little more than a year. But then things started going downhill. When 2020 ended, his government was bombing sites in Tigray, a northern western region of the country predominantly occupied by ethnic Tigrayans. Refugees were streaming into neighboring Sudan. There was even talk of a civil war and ethnic cleansing. At the first glance, the similarities between this situation and that of Myanmar before the recent coup are hard to dismiss. Another Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Aung San Suu Kyi, unapologetically abetted the ethnic cleansing of the Rohingyas, a minority Muslim ethnic group. She couldn't even bring herself to call it what it was. But it is fair to compare these two people. Is Abiy Ahmed justified in waging war on his own countrymen? What happened to his promise to bring freedom back to Ethiopia? Did grand vision of greatness through conquest possess him? Did the stress of the pandemic get the better hold of him? Or has Abiy Ahmed been a fraud all along? I am loath to give definitive answers, partially because I have a dog in his side. Ethiopia shares a border with my own homeland, and partially because the situation is as complicated as they come and unfolds against the backdrop of a long and tumultuous history. I will content myself with a critical outline of the situation. The immediate cause of the crisis is quite recent. In hindsight, it's obvious that the crisis became possible when Abiy became Prime Minister and became inevitable when he dissolved the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, the EPRDF. The party that had ruled Ethiopia since 1991. Too much changed too fast. Abiy's ascendancy was the culmination of most 3 years of intense youth-led protest, agitating for greater political freedom. The EPRDF had, over the years since its use to power, come to capture the state and winning its indistinguishable with all the arms of government. This gave it the perfect cover for colossal corruption among its members and brutal repression of dissent. Even worse was that, for most of its history, the EPRDF was dominated by only one of its 4 constituent parties, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, the TPLF, representing the new 7 million ethnic Tigrayans, was the real driver of the EPRDF. This should not be surprising. The EPRDF was a creation of the TPLF, then a guerrilla outfit, which constituted to its present a nationally united front in the fight against the communist dirge regime of the Mengistu in the 1980s. Perhaps more important, though, it is that it stayed dominant for so long in a country of 110 million people with a delicate ethnic federalist system of government, central power and being monopolized by a party representing only 7 million people, isn't tenable in the long term. It is even less likely to be successful if that party is repressive and corrupt and favors its own minority. Hence, the protests in 2015 and 2018 protests, which were sparked by an innocuous capital city master plan and driven by youth from the Oromo and the Amara, the country's largest ethnic groups. This explains why Abiy Ahmed, an Oromo, wasn't exactly a darling of the TPLF. He was installed by a cornered party, only under duress. Perhaps the hope was that his appointment would pacify the protesters and then he could be nagged out in 2 years of the 2020 elections. But whoever harbored this hope miscalculated. Not only had the other partner parties in the EPRDF been setting the stage for the ouster of the TPLF for years, but it turns out that Abiy was honest when, at his confirmation, he declared that it is important that we make use of this opportunity to chart a new political beginning, appropriately with the spirit of utmost responsibility. Within months, he had released thousands of political prisoners, lightened up the government's hand in dealing with dissent, began prosecuting repressive officials from the previous government, predominantly the Tigrayan, unsurprisingly, and initiated talks to bring the war with Ethiopia to an end. He also dissolved the EPRDF coalition at the end of 2019, replacing it with a new political outfit called the Prosperity Party. The leaders of the TPLF, finding themselves repudiated and no longer in control, started retreating to the hilly region that houses most of Ethiopia's Tigrayans in the far northeast. From there, they could continue holding a sway, albeit over a smaller region, and have a platform from which to challenge the federal government, feeling themselves justified by the fact that Ethiopia's constitution grants the federal ethnic regions a lot of autonomy and right to secede, and challenge the federal government they did. Among many other things, they undermined efforts to settle a border dispute between Tigray and Amara, stopped talk of secession, and in 2020 started arming the youth and security forces as if preparing for an invasion. Finally, when the federal government postponed the 2020 elections because of the COVID-19 pandemic, they vowed to go ahead with regional elections, which they held in September. They were poking the bear, daring Abiy to do something in November. A federal military installation in Tigray was allegedly attacked by an armed Tigrayan militia. The federal government responded with a military offensive. Thus, the crisis turned violent. Communication was cut off. Talk of civil war became real, and displaced persons also fled into Sudan. If the foregoing roads like a lopsided castigation of the leaders of Tigray without taking into Abiy's considerations role in the whole affair, it is probably because I mean it to be so. I honestly think that the bigger blame for the current situation lies squarely at the feet of the TPLF's leaders. They turned their bitterness in the face of democratic change into a rallying cry for a nationalistic war. That, however, does not mean that Abiy and his government are entirely sinless. No. He could have been a lot more pragmatic from the beginning, as they said. A cornered rat will bite the cat. He moved too fast and too brusquely to alienate people who had, until then, been firmly in control of vast resources. Something like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission would have been a lot more useful. It wasn't necessary to postpone the elections. He should have known there was no way that could have gone unchallenged by the Tigrayan leaders. By June, it was clear that COVID-19 didn't pose as deadly a threat in Africa as it seemed to be earlier. Even worse till now, Abiy Ahmed shuns dialogue, which seems like the only way the conflict can be brought to a sustainable resolution on the pretext that talking with opponents might legitimize their claims and will set the wrong precedent for other regions. As things stand now, someone will have to blink first. A Nobel Peace Prize winner shouldn't be ashamed to be the one that does that. He did it with Eritrea. He can surely do it again. This is where we end today's episode on editorial. Please like, share, comment. Let us know your thoughts on this particular episode. Thanks for watching.